and welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. I am your host Tyrant, and in today's episode we are delving back into the world of Lord of the Rings to take a look at this, the High Elven Warrior Sword. Now, as you guys know, we have been doing a couple of Lord of the Rings episodes lately, specifically looking at, the practicality of the swords. Are they functionally designed, essentially? And we've also taken a look at some of the other weapons, most namely Saruman's staff, which was a very, very fun episode. But we haven't talked about this one here, and this is the High Elven Warrior Sword, as I mentioned, and it is one of my favorite designs in the entire trilogy. I have loved this design ever since I was a kid, and the reason why I haven't spoken about it in those other episodes is because I wanted to do a full, dedicated episode, kind of go into a little bit the more, the nitty-gritty, give it a little bit more of a special treatment, because it's a fascinating weapon, which has some interesting design to it. So with that out of the way, let's get started with today's episode. This is an official replica. I can't actually swing it around and cut things, sadly, but I'll do my best. Let's get started. Starting off with its handle to blade ratio. I think the closest that you'd probably be able to find is maybe something like a glaive, right? A glaive is essentially a pole arm with a large cutting blade, or maybe like the 9-ringed Padao, I'm not sure how to say it. It's essentially a large hafted weapon with a large cutting blade. But this isn't that, and the reason why is because this handle here, while it may be absurdly large for something like, let's say, a sword, right? In terms of like a spear or a halberd, this is tiny, this is mini. And then we get into the issue of the blade ratio, because it's very close to like 50-50, right? When you look at the design of it. If I hold this blade here, right here, look at how long this blade is. This blade is about like an arming sword length. It's actually really, really short. Now, obviously, when it comes to, different types of weapons, you kind of go one way or the other. You go, let's say you want something like a spear or a halberd, you have smaller blades at the end of a really long handle or haft, right? But if you go the other direction where you want a lot of blade, then you have a smaller handle, relatively speaking. This one kind of just goes, screw it, 50-50. You get 50% blade, 50% handle. Now, this creates some detriments because you actually don't really have that much reach. You can see how much of a huge reach advantage just an average length blade has here. And in terms of sword length, that is a huge reach disparity. So right off the bat, that's a big issue. Then obviously we don't have that hand protection, so hitting the hands for something like this would actually be really easy when it comes to hand snipes. And if I decide to go further down on the handle to extend that reach out, all of a sudden it becomes a whole lot heavier. If this is what you wanted to do, then just put your handle to about here and make the blade extend all the way down. Because we've kind of gone half-half with it, it means when you try and go down further on it, this becomes incredibly heavy because of, weight distribution and mass. So that's why you hold it here, so you got more leverage with the strike. So it creates some issues when you have a 50-50 blade ratio, right? But in terms of the blade itself, it has incredibly beautiful grind lines and fullers. The handle is absolutely intricately carved with a beautiful, beautiful color on it that is very similar to my Gambison, of course, one of my favorites. Thanks for holding that for me, buddy. If you're enjoying today's episode, you should consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. But it is it's a beautiful design, but there's a lot of these detriments here, especially when we look at how you would use it. Because the tip is not in line with the handle, it means when you thrust with it, you can't thrust straight. You kind of have to scoop up to get a good thrust with it, or spin it around and then thrust like this. You'd probably have a lot more better opportunity thrusting like this. So curved weapons for thrusting aren't the best. They're really good at slashing, right? This is a slashing weapon. Then we come into the other issue is, what is the context of this slashing weapon? Because as far as I'm aware, there's only maybe 2 or 3 scenes we actually see this get used. One is in the opening dialogue, which is obviously the most notable one, where they are in a frontline formation with these swords slashing against the orcs. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the second one is, I think, at Helm's Deep, which also is, a battle scenario. It's a battle sword, right? Problem is, slashing weapons are not really the best against armor. With armor, if you want to defeat armor, there's two ways. You can either get through the armor with, let's say, like a thrusting weapon, maybe like a rondel dagger, or a blunt force weapon. If I pick up this big, giant wood stick and I smash your armor in with it, then it's going to work. The problem with this is, because it's a slashing weapon and it's a bladed slashing weapon, when we see it in the opening scene, right, and they're all kind of standing there like this, the orcs are approaching, they're on the front lines, and then they do a big upward sweep to slash through the orc's armor. You know, swords aren't really the main battlefield weapon to begin with, so having a sword at the front lines, especially one that doesn't really have much reach, trying to slash through armor, there's some problems in there. but again, like I said, this is one of my favorite, designs in the entire trilogy. There just is some issues here. So what I want to try and do is actually move this thing around somewhat effectively. Now, I'm just going to be freestyling it. I'm just going to be trying to come up with whatever I can that I would personally try and make this practical and functional. But again, that's just me. You might have different ideas on how to use it. So let's see if I can come up with something. Let's see if I can get any sort of usefulness. Now, when it comes to these sorts of weapons, there are some interesting techniques with thrusting and slashing at the same time. I find it very interesting because I don't know if it's really that conducive to this type of weapon, simply because of how big the curve is, right? This curve plays a lot of it adds very interesting dynamics, obviously, because that weight distribution, how the blade wants to fall with the thrusting. But then if I want to thrust with it and then come around and slash with it, it also makes it a little bit more interesting because of that curve, like I said. I got nothing. I don't think any of that was practical. Now, some of the things that I do like about it is it has this long false edge here. So essentially you could, if you wanted to, use those reverse edge strikes, because it should be sharpened on the back, right? Which adds some good dynamics to it. So what are my final thoughts on the High Elven Warrior Blade? I don't think it's very useful or practical. I struggle to come up with like a context where I think this thing would really shine. First and foremost, obviously the reach is a huge disadvantage, and no matter how you use it, the reach is just really bad. Whether you want to use it like a sword, you're at a reach disadvantage, or whether you want to use it like a polearm, you're still at a reach disadvantage. The overall reach of this is just kind of terrible. Now, one of the other issues that we have with it is if I was to use this, like, let's say in a dueling context, right? It has no hand protection, so hand snipes on this, because it is a lot slower than just a regular sword, you would be in a world of trouble. And then even if we look at it in perhaps like a battle context, because it's a large slashing weapon, this is kind of hard to use with a lot of people around you. And even then, does it hit that much harder than, say, a regular weapon, or just a big stick or a Dane axe? Not really. So what is the context that I would use this in? And that's what I really struggle with. So I would genuinely love to hear some of your guys' thoughts. Have you got any contexts where you think this thing would actually shine? Also, if you guys know of any weapon, historically or otherwise, I'd really love to check it out. Also to check out if there's like techniques for it or whatever that is an exact like 50-50, because that's really important. This is like a 50-50 split between blade and handle. I'm not talking 70-30, I'm not talking 80-20, I'm talking 50-50. Because that's what this is. And I think that's where a lot of the issues arise from it. Maybe as like an executioner's type thing, because you can have more leverage and you've got, a long enough blade. Maybe, I don't know. But that's going to be all. Thank you guys for watching. I genuinely hope you enjoyed. This one is far outside of my comfort zone. I struggle with this one. So I hope you guys enjoyed either way. And I'll see you next week in another episode. Have a good one.